My wife secretly inherited $350, $0 from her late uncle, then convinced me to sign a prenup that her lawyer said would protect our assets, only for her to secretly transfer the inheritance into her own name while I was away. Now she's claiming I have no claim to the house or the $200, $0 in joint savings, and she's already hired a lawyer to fight for half of everything. I just found out the truth and feel betrayed more than ever. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video, using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this. Honestly, I thought I knew everything about my wife, Lisa. We'd been married for 6 years, and on paper, everything was supposed to be perfect. She was beautiful, smart, confident, the kind of woman who seemed to have her life together. But in the last few months, something felt off. Little things, you know. She'd cancel plans last minute, get weird when I'd ask about her phone. And there was this constant tension I couldn't shake. I brushed it off at first, telling myself maybe she was stressed at work or just busy. But then I started noticing more. The biggest red flag hit me out of nowhere. I was away on a business trip last week, spent 3 days in Chicago. When I got back, I decided to surprise her and stop by her office to pick her up. That's when I saw her. Actually, I didn't see her, but I saw her phone on her desk with a message open. It was from some guy named Jake. The message was explicit, talking about meeting up that night, and she was replying with things I really didn't want to read. My stomach sank. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't confront her right then. Instead, I waited until I got home, trying to process what I'd seen. But it wasn't just the message that got to me. I noticed her behavior changing too. She started acting secretive, hiding her phone, deleting texts, and giving me these half-assed excuses when I asked about her day. I could tell she was hiding something, and I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. Why would she do this? Was I not enough? Or was this some kind of revenge for something I'd never even realized I'd done? Then late one night, I stumbled upon her laptop while she was asleep. I wasn't snooping, at least I told myself I wasn't, just looking for some documents she'd promised to send me. But what I found was worse than I expected. Hidden folders, secret emails, and bank statements showing deposits I never knew about. Turns out, Lisa inherited $350, $0 from her late uncle a few months ago. She convinced me to sign a prenup that her lawyer said would protect our assets, only she had her own plans. While I was away, she transferred the inheritance into her own name secretly without telling me. I found the emails confirming it and I felt sick. Betrayed doesn't even cover it. The worst part. She's now claiming I have no claim to the house or the $200, $0 we had in joint savings. She's already hired a lawyer to fight for half of everything, without a hint of remorse. And the thing is, she's been lying right to my face for months. She kept telling me she loved me, that we were building a future, all while plotting her moves behind my back. I don't even recognize her anymore. I never thought I'd be the guy to get played like this, especially by someone I trusted with my life. I feel like I've been hit by a freight train, and honestly, I don't know what to do next. After everything I uncovered, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, trying to process how Lisa, the woman I married, could be so cold and manipulative. I felt numb but also furious. How could she lie about the inheritance, convince me to sign a prenup, something she knew would protect her, and then secretly transfer that money into her own name? It was like I had been played for a fool from the very start. And the worst part, she's already talking about splitting everything 50-50, even though she's the one who betrayed me. That night, I stayed up packing the apartment, going over every detail. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew she'd deny everything. Lisa's the kind of person who can lie with a smile on her face and convince anyone she's the innocent victim. Still, I had some evidence now, and I was determined to get to the bottom of this. I decided I'd confront her in the morning. No more hiding, no more pretending I didn't know what she'd done. The next day, I waited until she got home from work. When she walked in, she looked perfect, smiling, acting like nothing was wrong. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. I told her I needed to talk, and she immediately started with her usual dismissive attitude. "What's wrong, babe? You look like you've seen a ghost." I didn't hold back. I laid out everything I found, her secret transfers, the emails, the messages. I told her I knew about Jake and the affair, about the inheritance, about her trying to hide everything from me. Her eyes widened for a moment, and then she scoffed. "You're crazy. You're just jealous because I've been working late and talking to a client. Jake's just a friend, and the inheritance, please. You think I'd cheat on you for money? That's ridiculous." She lied so smoothly I almost believed her at first, but then I pulled out the emails. Her face went pale. She tried to deny it, but I wasn't buying it anymore. Her reaction was classic Lisa, defensive, bitchy, and full of bullshit. "You're overreacting. You're just paranoid. If you don't trust me, maybe we shouldn't be married." She even had the nerve to say I was the one cheating, that I'd been distant lately because I was hiding something. It was so typical: turn the tables, deflect, accuse me of what she was guilty of. But I saw through her. This wasn't just about the affair or the money. It was about her complete lack of respect for me and what we had. That confrontation hit me harder than I expected. I felt betrayed, yes, but also humiliated. All those nights I thought she was working late or just stressed. She was out lying, cheating, and scheming behind my back. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. I'd always been the stable one in this relationship, and now I was left with a wreckage of lies, betrayal, and stolen money. The emotional blow was brutal, and I couldn't help but wonder, was she ever truly mine? Or was I just another pawn in her game? I wanted to get angry, to scream at her and demand answers, but I knew that wouldn't change anything right now. Instead, I just sat there, stunned, trying to hold myself together. I realized I was at a crossroads. I could fight for what's rightfully mine, or I could just walk away, leaving the whole mess behind. But deep down, I knew I couldn't ignore this betrayal. It wasn't just about the money or the affair. It was about trust, respect, and the woman I thought I knew. That day, I felt like I lost a part of myself, and I knew everything was about to change forever. The days that followed were a blur. I spent hours digging through more emails, bank statements, and legal documents, trying to piece together exactly how far Lisa had gone. It was like uncovering a web of lies spun so tight I didn't know where to start. The inheritance, the secret transfer, her lawyer, everything was a tangled mess, and I was left feeling more betrayed than ever. Honestly, I felt like I'd been punched again, this time in the gut. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly then? Turn around and accuse me of being paranoid or untrustworthy? I knew I had to act. I couldn't let her get away with this. I contacted a lawyer myself, one I found who specialized in divorce and asset protection. I told him everything about her inheritance, the transfer, the prenup, her lies about the affair. The lawyer was cold, professional, and told me I might have a strong case to claim my share of the assets if I could prove she'd transferred the inheritance secretly. That was the key, the proof I needed. I also discovered she'd been talking to her lawyer about fighting for half of everything in a divorce. That made me furious. She was already planning to take everything I worked for, while she was out cheating and lying. I decided I couldn't just confront her again. I had to catch her in the act, or at least gather undeniable proof. I started installing some discreet surveillance on her phone and emails. It felt dirty, but I needed to protect myself and get the evidence I'd need in court. Over the next week, I watched her behavior escalate. She was more secretive, more dismissive, and she kept making excuses whenever I questioned her about her whereabouts or her late nights. She even started talking about us needing counseling, like she was trying to salvage something she'd already destroyed. I saw right through her. She was just stalling, buying herself time to hide more. One afternoon, I followed her to a hotel downtown. She claimed she was meeting a client, but I found her sneaking into a room with Jake. That was the final nail in the coffin. Seeing her with him so blatantly made everything click into place. She'd been cheating on me with Jake for months. I snapped a few photos, took screenshots of their texts, and made sure I had everything I needed. That night, I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. Relief because I finally knew the truth, and rage because she'd lied and betrayed me so badly. That night, I stayed awake, going over everything. The betrayal cut deep, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't stay in this marriage anymore. Not after all the lies, the theft, and the cheating. I thought about confronting her again, but I decided I'd rather let her find out I had the evidence and let her squirm. It was time to make some serious decisions. I didn't want to be with someone who'd betray me like this, who'd lie about everything and steal from us both. I was done being the fool, and I knew I had to get out, not just for my own sanity but for my future peace. The most unexpected thing. I never saw it coming that someone I loved and trusted could turn out to be so manipulative, so ruthless. It's like she was living a double life, all for money and some twisted sense of revenge or power. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? How did I let her get away with this? But I guess I was too blinded by love and hope. Now I was left picking up the pieces, trying to figure out what's next. All I know is I won't be the victim anymore. Not this time. The day I finally decided to confront her about everything, I felt like I was walking into a trap. My mind was racing, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know the truth. I had gathered enough evidence, photos, emails, bank statements to prove she'd been lying and cheating behind my back. Still, facing Lisa face to face was another story. I knew she was good at spinning lies, twisting the truth, and making herself look innocent. But I also knew I had the upper hand now. She was home when I arrived, acting like everything was normal, pouring herself a glass of wine like she didn't have a care in the world. I looked at her, cold and calm, and just laid everything out on the table. I told her I knew about her affair with Jake, about the inheritance she secretly transferred, and how she'd been lying to me this entire time. I pushed the evidence across the table, screenshots, bank transfers, even the email where she admitted she'd been planning to fight me for half the assets. Her reaction was instant. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and started with her usual bullshit. "Oh, come on, Jason. You're overreacting. You're just jealous because I've been talking to Jake, sex with him, I might add. I don't know what you think you found, but you're wrong. You're always accusing me of cheating, but this is just your paranoia talking." She looked at me with that fake innocent face like she was the victim here. I couldn't believe how good she was at lying, at pretending she didn't do anything wrong. I didn't buy it. I told her I had proof, that I knew about her sneaking around, about her trying to hide the inheritance. I told her I knew she'd transferred the money into her name while I was away, and that she'd been lying to me about everything. Her face twisted into a sneer. "You think I'd be stupid enough to do all this without telling you? You're just trying to control me, Jason. You're insecure. Maybe if you weren't so distant, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." That's when I realized her lies knew no bounds. She was already trying to turn this around, make it seem like I was the one at fault. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disgust. How could she be so manipulative? How could she betray me like this, then try to guilt-trip me into feeling guilty for catching her? I told her I'd had enough. That I knew she'd been cheating, stealing, lying. Everything I thought I knew about her was a lie. I told her I was done, that I was filing for divorce and fighting to get my fair share of everything she'd stolen and hidden. I saw her eyes narrow and she spat back. "You'll regret this, Jason. I've already hired a lawyer. You're not getting a damn thing. You're just a jealous fool who couldn't keep me happy." That moment I felt like I'd been punched again, this time emotionally and mentally. I'd trusted her, loved her, and now I was just some fool who got played. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't even cry anymore. It was like I'd been living in a nightmare and I couldn't wake up. I sat there silent, staring at her, realizing that everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a lie. She was a bitch, plain and simple. A woman who would lie, cheat, and steal just to get what she wanted. I left her apartment that night feeling hollow. I knew I had to get out, but I also knew this was only the beginning. She'd fight me tooth and nail to keep what she stole, and I had to be prepared for a long, ugly battle. But I also knew one thing for sure. I'd be damned if I let her get away with this. I'd fought for her, loved her, and trusted her, and she repaid me with lies, betrayal, and sex with another man. That kind of betrayal isn't something you just move past. It changes you. It makes you question everything, even yourself. And honestly, I didn't know if I'd ever be able to trust again. The days after that confrontation felt like walking through a fog. I was emotionally drained, but I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to salvage what was left of my life and assets. Lisa was already preparing to fight me in court over everything. Her lawyer had called, and I could tell she was trying to spin it all as me being paranoid, controlling, and jealous. She's good at that. I've seen her do it before. But I had the evidence, and I was ready to fight back. I spent every waking hour talking to my lawyer, going over every detail of the prenup, the inheritance, the bank statements, and the emails. We discussed the best way to prove that she'd transferred the inheritance into her name without my knowledge. I also learned that I might have a case to claim part of the house and savings if I could show she'd been dishonest and malicious in her actions. It was a relief to finally have some legal ammunition, but I knew this was going to be a long, nasty fight. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, acting like the perfect wife in front of friends and family, pretending everything was fine. But behind closed doors, I could see her cracking. She was snapping at me more often, trying to control the narrative, accusing me of ruining her life and trying to take her everything. She even hired her own lawyer, and I knew she was preparing for a battle to keep every penny and every asset she'd stolen. One evening, I found out she was sneaking out to meet Jake again. I followed her, just to see what she was up to. Sure enough, she slipped out of the house, met him at that same hotel downtown, and spent hours with him. Seeing her with him, so brazen, made my blood boil. It confirmed what I'd suspected all along, that she'd been cheating on me for months. And I'd been too blind to see it. That moment, I realized she was willing to do anything, lie, cheat, steal, just to keep her grip on her lies and her money. The most intense part, I decided I had enough. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I took my evidence to my lawyer and told him I wanted to file for divorce immediately. I wanted her to be held accountable, not just for the affair, but also for the theft of the inheritance and her attempt to cheat me out of what was rightfully mine. I knew she'd fight tooth and nail, but I was determined. I'd be damned if she took everything I worked for, while she was out lying, cheating, and secretly transferring money into her own name. The night I filed the papers, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that I was finally taking control, but dread because I knew this was just the beginning of a war, one that would test my patience, my sanity, and my ability to trust myself again. I kept thinking about how I missed the woman I married, how I thought I knew her, and how she turned out to be someone I didn't recognize. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever feel whole again. But I also knew I had to move forward, no matter how much it hurt, no matter how much she tried to manipulate the situation. I realized something important during this process. Trust is a fragile thing. Once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. And the worst part, she didn't even seem to care. She was more worried about saving her money, her reputation, and her ability to keep what she'd stolen. I'd been played like a fool, and now I was just trying to pick up the pieces. But I promised myself I wouldn't be her pawn anymore. I'd fight for what's mine, and I'd make sure she paid for her lies. That's the only way I knew how to start healing, by taking back control, even if it meant tearing everything apart first. The court date finally arrived, and I knew this was it. The moment everything would come out into the open. I was prepared with every piece of evidence, every email, every bank transfer, every lie she'd told. Lisa looked confident, almost smug, like she thought she had everything under control. But I wasn't about to let her manipulate her way out of this one. I had nothing left to lose, and I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. The courtroom was tense. Her lawyer tried to spin her story, claiming that I was paranoid and that she deserved half of everything because we were married. But I laid out the facts, how she secretly transferred the inheritance into her own name, how she'd been cheating with Jake, and how she'd lied about her intentions from the start. I presented the emails, the bank statements, and the photos I'd taken. The judge listened carefully, and I could see her start to squirm under the weight of the evidence. When the judge finally made her ruling, it was like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. She awarded me a significant portion of the inheritance, including the house, and ordered Lisa to pay back the joint savings she'd tried to hide. It wasn't everything I wanted. She'd managed to keep some of her stolen money, but I felt a sense of justice. I'd fought hard, and I'd won what was fair. Lisa's face was a mask of fury and disbelief. But she knew she'd lost. She tried to argue, to threaten, but the judge was firm. The truth had spoken for itself. After the court, I left feeling exhausted but finally free. The betrayal had shattered my trust, but I was also relieved to be rid of someone who'd lied, cheated, and stolen from me. I realized I'd wasted too much time trying to hold on to a relationship built on deception. Now I was finally ready to rebuild my life, alone, but honest. I knew I'd be cautious about who I trusted next, but I also knew I'd never let someone manipulate me like that again. Looking back, I learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust isn't something to take for granted, and sometimes you have to fight for yourself, no matter how painful it gets. Lisa's betrayal showed me that people can hide their true colors for a long time, and that money can bring out the worst in people. But I also found strength I didn't know I had. I may have been blindsided, but I refused to be defeated. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, my advice is simple. Don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts. Gather your evidence and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Sometimes you have to fight dirty to get your justice, and in the end the truth will come out, no matter how much someone tries to hide it. I may have lost a lot, but I gained clarity, strength, and a fresh start. That's more than I could have hoped for after everything I went through.